Hey guys, it's Alex from Wilkinson Audio. I'm back. I did some stuff with the guitars. They're relatively similar. I made a weird sounding thing for this part that's just the guitar and the drums. Because, you know, it just has some interest to the song and I don't know what's going to be there. I'm not particularly fond of what I came up with, but it's a good spot for like a science experiment. Just do whatever you want, make a really weird, interesting sound, because it could be, I don't know if they're going to put vocals over that or what, but it could be an interesting point in the song to just kind of have like some interesting sounds, because the solo by itself with the drums probably isn't going to have enough interest. So it'd be pretty cool to have like something that sounds pretty cool there. As for the rhythm and the leads, I've narrowed it down to these ones that I could kind of figure out of the mess of stuff they gave me. I'm pretty sure these ones are all the ones that are actually going to be in there. And there's actually less than I actually thought there were. So there's just this lead thing. Well, we have the main rhythm guitars. And then we have our one lead kind of guitar. Just still a bit too distorted, I would say. But, you know, you just got to keep tweaking. And one thing I did with that is you'll notice that I think it's this EQ is automated. So it kind of, there's a couple parameters that change on it. One is pretty subtle. One is this this band that goes down. I'm not really sure why I did that or where that is. Let me check. Okay, so it just looks like, what did I do here? I could have just split this up onto two different tracks with the subtle change in EQ, but it might just be easier to automate it because they're basically the same guitar. One has a little bit more presence here because there's no vocals, and then when the vocals come in, it cuts a dB off the 3K range, which is kind of, doesn't really do much because I have this boost at the 5K range, or at the 10K range, that's adding some air to it. So it's kind of shifting the balance of the spectrum from like kind of over here to up over here, which is going to be a bit beyond where the vocals are sitting, just adding some air. You can kind of hear that here, how that change works. Because if we take this band and we leave that 3K range in, it could potentially mask the vocals. Which we'll find out, I guess, when we actually mix the vocals, what will happen there. But it just seems like a safer bet to kind of push the frequency of that lead up a little bit, if possible. And then there's also this octave under for the guitar, just to reinforce the chorus. So that's right in the same range as the rhythm guitars. The frequencies are going to be, like, you know, it's going to be a mess. If you tried to make both those really audible and clear. So I just more turned it into almost like a pad, just a lot of reverb, and it just has size now, but you'll never actually specifically hear it in the mix. Here's what that sounds like. And you can hear it's clipping a little bit. That won't make any difference. It's going to be so low in the mix. I'll show you. One sec. And if we get rid of it, so really it just adds some size to it. That might be a little too prominent actually, because we don't want it to be fighting with anything. We just want it really in the background, so I'll just turn that down a couple dB. Maybe it was fine where it was. We'll just leave it where it was for now. Okay, and so now we're going to start on the bass, and we can hear. So even without any bass instrument, your mix should still sound full, like it should sound like it doesn't have a bass. But if your mix sounds thin without a bass, your mix is needs help, I guess. It should sound somewhat full without bass. like, it doesn't sound particularly thin. It just doesn't sound like it has a bass, which is cool because it doesn't have a bass. And then when we add the bass in, it should fill at that low end. And yeah, well, we'll see how we mix it in here. It's going to be interesting because this is not a real bass guitar. This is actually, they just sent MIDI and some kind of it's almost like it's just a basic synth, but it sounds like almost like a plucked guitar, but it's just a synth doing that, which is kind of cool. We might be able to use that. And then I guess they tried to do like a grit track on that, which didn't really work because there's no real frequency material to really work with to do grit for that bass. I'm probably going to, you could do this. You could do a mix that is really expansive sounding with lots of sub lows and keep the bass like unclear, as if it's just sub lows, and you could kind of bury it and not have it be present at all, and that would work. I don't think that would be the best direction for this particular mix. Like, that might work for a big like a rock ballad or something like that maybe, but for this I think we should probably use some sort of artificial bass, like actual VST instrument that's going to play the bass parts for us. And but the nice thing with the MIDI is we can still use the MIDI to fill out the sub lows of the song, which is really handy. If you're ever doing stuff with really low tuned instruments, it's great to have the MIDI track for the bass, just because it's almost impossible to record a really like a crazy drop tuned bass and get an even low end. So it's really cool when you do have the bass MIDI like this. So we're basically going to build a bass guitar and use this MIDI and see what we can kind of do with it. So first, I guess we'll probably get rid of this because we won't really end up using it, I don't think. Okay, so these two MIDIs are the same. Okay, so here's our bass MIDI. So the first thing we're going to do is I guess we'll try the low end thing first. So we're just going to solo the kick drum. And we're going to try and put this under the kick drum. And so we'll just use a simple synthesizer here. We'll do a sine wave or something like that. Okay. All right, let's try some stuff. Let's just try and make something totally consistent that'll fit under the, let's just do some experiments and see if we can get something that's totally solid that'll fit right under the kick here. You can hear this kind of building up. We don't want it to build up. We just want it to be under. Well, that sounds cool. Oh, another thing that I was going to do before we get too far into the bass is I was just going to add that reverb, the global reverb kind of used on the mix. I didn't do that during the guitar mixing part. I should probably do that now before we get too into this, because it's going to be pretty important to the overall mix. So generally what I do is I use one global reverb for the entire project, just to put everything in the same kind of space. I have this IR. I have no idea where it came from, but it's awesome. It's just like, it sounds like a small studio, but basically it's a medium-sized room that just sounds awesome, and I just kind of use it for a lot of the stuff I work on, because it just sounds realistic and just good. So I will just start sending things to that. As I was talking about with the guitars, they definitely benefit from this because that amp sim tone and stuff that just doesn't sound. Part of the reason I don't think that amp sims totally sound like the real rooms and stuff is because previously the impulse responses didn't really include the tail, like the reverb tail, probably due to the amount of additional processing it would take to include that in the impulse responses. So they don't really have a room tone to them. But when you mic up an actual cab, you get a bit of room tone in there, and that kind of gives it a bit of life. And this is kind of emulating that. If we take this and we send it to our global reverb, I'll just call it that. So we'll send that, our guitar bus down to there for our rhythms. Let's find it here, 92, and we'll listen to that. Obviously not gonna use that much, but you can hear what the room tone kind of sounds like there. And so you do that, and that's cool, basically. It's just cool. And then you take other stuff, and we also send this to the reverb. This is, we'll call it weird lead. This is that weird science experiment thing I did. If you're wondering how I made that, I don't even know. It's just a ring modulator, reverb, amplifier, peak limiter, and then EQ. So I was just messing around and trying to come up with something that sounds interesting, and it kind of does. But we'll send that also to the global reverb. And what it allows us to do is it allows us to send things back and forward in the mix pretty easily. So if we want more, like if I turn this down a bit, but we have the send turned up, it'll push this further back. Which we probably don't want it, that far back or anything like that, but we will give it another couple dB on the reverb send just to push it back a little bit and give it some space. And then our leads and stuff would also benefit from some added size and some added sense of space as well. So we'll throw those down, and we'll give them slightly more than the rhythm guitars, which would be more forward, more in your face. So we don't want those to have too much reverb. But this giant, this octave backup here for the chorus should have even more, because we want that to almost be like a wash, almost like a pad. So let's listen to this guy. So we're starting to kind of create a sense of space here. Also with the reverbs and stuff, it's a good idea to EQ them because they can get pretty muddy pretty quick. And you can hear how stuff is starting to kind of mesh and glue together. The drum bus will send the whole thing, but at a reduced rate, like at less than probably even the rhythm guitars, because it already has the room mics, it already has some reverb. So we'll just send it just to give it like a sense that's in the same space. But I mean, with the room mics and stuff, it already has its own sense of space that we don't want to mess with too much. But we can send, I won't bother sending their room mics to it, but you could do that. Actually, the overhead would probably be a good thing to send. The overhead mics to the global reverb, just to give them kind of the same sound as the rest of the stuff here. So we'll just do another send at like -18, because it's going to be added to the global send kind of from the drums already. And even this bass, which most people would not do, I'll send at a very low level to the global reverb. Just because it'll give it a little bit of stereo information and just fit in the room a little bit. Which is cool. And we could do the same with the snare to give the snare some space. The snare really defines the space of the entire recording. So yeah, like, you know, it defines more than any other instrument what the room sounds like. So hang on. So no, it kind of has the impression that this was recorded in kind of a medium-sized room now, and it's kind of gluing everything together, which is awesome. So we'll just keep adding stuff to that as we mix here. And yeah, it's good because it gives you the ability to push things forward and back, and then you can just kind of adjust your overall reverb just with this one track here. And you can EQ it and do whatever you want with it. But yeah, it just adds some nice glue to the whole mix. So for the bass, we have our and with bass, it's usually okay to kind of distort it a bit by compressing it so hard, because it's just not really heard in the mix, like when you distort it. Obviously, we don't want it having that kind of distortion that where it's actually making harmonics that make it sound like a different type of synth, but just trying to capture those transients. And the guitars, the rhythm guitars reverb send might be a bit heavy. Shouldn't really be able to hear it. All right, well that's, this should be pretty subtle. Okay, and now we'll duplicate our bass track, and we'll get rid of its effects, and we'll use a fake bass. I'm just going to use Zombase to do this. I think. We'll use Zombase for the main body of the notes and stuff. Actually, I'm going to change this global reverb sent from the bass to the bus instead of that specific channel. Okay. Okay. It was -20. Okay. Oops. Okay. All right, so we're gonna take this and we're gonna modify it. And we're gonna have our sub-lows going below the kick, and then we're gonna have this real bass going above the kick. And then we're gonna do a third track, probably using Zombase 3, which is played harder for the upper grit kind of aggressiveness so you can hear the bass guitar. All right, we're just gonna compress this here and see if we can get it to sound good. You'll notice if you get the settings kind of like, you can get the settings to kind of groove with the song. Which is cool. And then we'll do a limiter kind of thing after. All right, well, we'll have to hear the whole mix to really work on these, so we'll do another track. Bass grit. Bass grit. Okay, and for this we'll load up another instance of contact. And we'll load up Zombase 4, or sorry, Zombase 3, which we will use for the grit track. And how we will do that is like this. We'll just high pass it. Oops, we'll need some MIDI. Okay. And then we'll just copy from our guitars here, copy basically a kind of a guitar chain over. But we probably don't actually want to use a guitar amp really, we'll just use Sans amp emulation. And then pretend it's going through a guitar cab, and then we'll just work off that because we have our guitar cab here. And need that blend knob. All right, now we'll just limit that the same way. That sounds kind of cool. We'll just keep working on this here. Thank you. I'm gonna try wave shaper distortion. We'll wave shaper distortion on this as well. And parts like this, you could automate the room reverb up and the room mics up and stuff. Like for this kind of stuff, we'll do the far room mic up and then we'll do the reverb send. I'm sure there's a quick way to do that. I can't remember what it is. Let me find it here. Well, there's some way to automate that. Can't figure out what it is right now. Yeah, that's interesting. I know you can definitely automate the send levels. I'll have to figure out a quick way to do that. Oh, there it is. Send volume for the reverb, and we'll put that up a couple dB for this part. Okay, let's see what happens here. And Actually, wouldn't be a bad idea to do some automation for those choruses and stuff too, just with the reverbs and the far room sounds and stuff like that, just to get the choruses to be bigger. You know, increase the reverb to certain things would definitely help the chorus become larger. And let's see if the vocals will fit in our mix. These are totally unmixed or whatever, but we'll see if it sounds like there's space for them. We can already hear that there's some interference with the bass, with our mid bass, where it's the actual bass playing the low mid kind of stuff here. I guess it's gonna be around here. Well, that sounds like the vocals will be able to fit in there. Still a lot of tweaking needed to be done, but that's how we're gonna do the bass, I guess. And I'll just keep fiddling with this, and next time we come back, we'll mix the vocals in. And then we'll have a pretty good idea of what the whole thing's gonna sound like, and we'll go from there. Cool, thanks for watching.